Let's do that hockey.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the EliteProspects podcast. I'm your host, Peter Harling, and this is going to be episode 107, I think we're at now. This is going to be the next installment of the top prospect ranking series that I've been writing for my NHL Trade Rumors. And this episode will be focusing on the Calgary Flames top prospects. And spoiler alert, I couldn't narrow it down to 10 to save my life. It gets pretty difficult to really hone down it to a final 10. So this is going to be more like 20. So I'll try my best to keep it to about an hour or so. To help me with sorting through all this, I'm very pleased to welcome to the show for the first time Mitch Brown from EliteProspects. He's the director of North American Scouting, and you can find his work all over the EP Rinkside. By the way, if you are not a subscriber to EliteProspects Rinkside, you're really missing out. I know there's a lot of places that you can subscribe to, you know, Patreon or The Athletic and all that, but I really have to endorse the EliteProspects subscription. It gives you really great access to some fantastic articles from some very great writers, as well as it unlocks a lot of great stats that aren't available to the general public. And I use them very frequently for all of my research for my writing, the podcast, and just my fantasy hockey pool. I like to look at the players' game logs and see how their progression is going throughout the season, just as one example off the top of my head. So without further ado, welcome to the show, eh? Thanks, Mitch, for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Pete. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to breaking down this very complex, messy prospect pool.
Yeah, for almost all of the rankings that I've done so far, all the guests that I've had on have kind of said, yeah, no, I think your list is good. It kind of lines up pretty well with mine. You know, move one guy up or two down here, in the bottom 10, a few spots where you got him. But I'm pleased to say that Mitch and I have some pretty big discrepancies on our lists. So, I mean, after the top ranked guy, we don't really agree on anything. So this is going to be very interesting. But like I said at the beginning, the Flames have a deep prospect pool to begin with. So when I was doing the rankings, I found that the top 4 were pretty solid. And then after that, I could be talked into interchanging any players from the bottom 5 all the way out of the top 10 into the next 10. I just found it to be pretty muddy that way. But before we start getting into the individual players, let's talk a little bit about the Flames here first, Mitch. I kind of talked about how deep they are. I think they got a lot of players in the middle range, like B-level prospects, guys that are good and whatnot. They've got a couple at the top that are very good. And then this offseason, they really rounded out their NHL roster, kind of eliminating any roster spots for any of these players to have a job to win. They're going to have to wait for an injury or something like that to find a spot. Do you kind of see the roster lined up that way?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation to be in, because I think in terms of NHL readiness, who is a guy who's going to come in and be an effective NHL player right away? You're looking in net at Daniel Vladar. That's pretty much it. And then the rest of it, very, very thin. Matthew Phillips could be a good fourth liner this season. Ruczicka might be able to do the job, but the only other guy is maybe Zary does some big stuff in camp, is able to break in, but it's going to be a tricky uphill battle for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they signed a bunch of guys. Trevor Lewis, Brad Richardson, Brett Ritchie, Tyler Pitlick, Eric Gabranson, and these guys are all kind of roster blockers, but they're all on expiring contracts to be unrestricted free agents. So, this year, I don't see a lot of opportunity there, but if they don't hit the free agent market next year, there'll be lots of opportunity for some of these guys to progress. And then I look at who's not on waiver exempt contracts anymore. And there's a couple guys that really stand out there to me. Glen, Gawdin, Matt Phillips, Luke Phillip. Oliver Shillington, all these guys, Michael Stone, none of them can go to the minors without having to go through waivers. Do you think there's a possibility that not all these guys can make the team, so they're going to have to send a bunch of them through waivers? Do you see them clearing? Do you think there's a chance that they get sniped?
I think there's a 0% chance that Shillington clears. I think he's definitely getting picked up, but you would definitely be able to squeeze someone like Matthew Phillips out of there. Well, he is a fan favorite. He's a fan favorite in Calgary, not a fan favorite elsewhere. And again, I think with Phillips, you're looking at a guy who's probably a third, fourth line type. So there's definitely, they have a lot of guys, but they can squeeze some through. And I don't think, other than Shillington, any of them are really going to move the needle NHL wise.
Yeah. And talking about some of the depth of their prospects, they've got a bunch of players who, and these are mostly the honorable mention guys, but I found that there was a bunch that I really liked, and maybe closer to their draft year, I was really bullish on them, but they just haven't progressed very well. So we'll hit on some of those guys as we go along. I'm a little bit concerned that once their ELC contracts expire, they might find themselves playing in another league or looking for a job with another team. But let's get to the list. Let's start right at the top. And we both had Conor Zary as their number one prospect. And for me, it was an easy choice to put him at number one. I think he's got the most upside. He might not be the most NHL ready out of all their prospects, but I think he's got a ceiling that's higher than anyone else that we're going to talk about. Why did you guys have him ranked number one?
So Conor Zary, for us, the big thing was the playmaking, the growth that he made this season. So previous years, got a lot of assists, but he was mostly a shooter and can generate offense via the shot. This season, he started slowing down. He started problem solving a little bit, trying to draw defensive attention to himself and then setting up teammates. Statistically, he virtually stopped shooting entirely, which is reflected both in his shots on goal per game and in his goals, but that's not going to be how he's going to play in the NHL. The playmaking is merely icing on the cake with the skills that they're getting with him. He's a very powerful shooter. He's very physical. He gets to the inside lane consistently. He finds space off puck. He's a type of player who's going to wear the opposition down via his ability to play inside and also his ability to make impressive off puck reads defensively. You know, he's a pretty solid bet to become someone who's going to score 25, 30 goals in the NHL while bringing some defensive value.
Yeah, and he had a nice audition at the start of the season in the American Hockey League, waiting for the junior leagues to fire back up. Were you surprised that he didn't stick around in Stockton? Or I guess they didn't have a choice. They had to send him back to junior. So it'll be interesting to see. Does he have another year of eligibility left? He's 19. I think he's done.
Yeah, he's done now. He can go back for his overage year. He's going to go to the AHL and he's going to score a lot in the AHL.
Right.
His early stint was very good with Stockton. And I think he's going to be, going with, probably around a point per game in the AHL if he starts there.
Yeah, you always have to take these smaller sample sizes with a grain of salt when, the season ends and players from junior or NCAA try an audition at the end of the season at the pro level. They can have really fantastic stats, like more than point a game production. And then the following season, when they try to translate that through a full season, it's just not there. There's plenty of examples. Are you concerned? Doesn't sound like you're concerned that that's going to be the case with Zary. You think he's going to hit the ground running and be the leading scorer in Stockton?
Well, the key difference is he started the season with Stockton. He was getting in reps with them. He knows his teammates and he wasn't getting fed perfect ideal situation. So generally when those guys come in at the end of the season, they got the name value. The NHL team wants to see what they can do. So their AHL staff feels pressure to put them in prime minutes on the power play and everything. In Zary's case, he definitely has the credentials to do that, but it was also very clear that he wasn't just capitalizing on a good situation. It was very clear that he could handle the pace of the AHL. He was creative enough. He was physically strong enough. The skating is really the only thing that is problematic, but it's not problematic in the AHL. That's for sure.
Right. All right. So it's safe to say that we both like Conor Zary, and if you have an opportunity to own him in your fantasy league, we endorse that decision and ownership
For sure.
All right. So it was fun agreeing with you. Let's move on to the rest of the list. So at number 2, I have Jakob Pelletier. Played last year in the queue with Vladar, and you had him ranked at the bottom of your list at number 8. That's a pretty big difference. He posted over 1.5 points with Vladar. That's pretty impressive. He also made an impact on Team Canada at the World Juniors, helping them to a silver medal. And he'll be moving into the American Hockey League this coming season as well. So I'm kind of pretty bullish on him. He's 5'9", 161, so he's not a big power forward, but I don't see too many red flags in his game. Is there something that I'm missing that has him a little bit lower for you?
So the first thing, anytime there's a disagreement like this, is so what's the what's the philosophy that's driving it? And for us, when you look at the majority of our rankings, like our draft board, our top 15 prospects, or top 100 prospect ranking, it's mostly via star potential. So who is the most likely to become a star in this spot? And in the case of Pelletier, we felt that even though he was in a tier with prospects number 3 to 9, the potential for him becoming a star player was very slim. And so in a ranking where you're looking at, who's going to be the most effective third liner, who's going to be a buzzsaw, who's going to be a fan favorite, he's going to be a lot higher. But in our cases, we just didn't see that. And the reason for that is a couple things. The first thing is how he attacks, how he creates his offense. He's a straight line player. He just skates straight down the boards until he runs out of space. He's a below average skater. He can't really flex his ankles far enough. His hips stay really high. His strides wide. His feet kick. It's not going to hold him back from being an NHL player, but it does provide a very concerning image for a top 6 potential. And then the next part of it is his playmaking. He significantly added playmaking components to his game, but unlike, say, Zary, the difficulty with it is that it doesn't seem to be something that's going to translate to higher levels, again, because he's a straight line player. When you try to find the trailer in the NHL, you got to push to the inside with crossovers, come back to the outside. You kind of got to prod for these seams. You kind of got to diversify. And he doesn't really do that. He's very good at what he does, though. And what he does is he's got NHL instincts around the net. He's got an NHL shot. He times his movement into space brilliantly. He's going to score goals. We just think it's probably more in a third line role. And that's ultimately why we ended up sticking him behind some higher upside picks. But if you want to tell me he's the second best player in this organization, there's not really a ton of reason to disagree. I mean, especially if the emphasis is on NHL readiness or how effective he can be inside of a role.
Yeah, two of the factors that I look at a little bit is the upside and the certainty and the ETA. Those are things that are important for me in ranking fantasy players. Now, my ranking here for my NHL trade isn't a fantasy ranking, but it's hard to turn that switch off, I guess, for me when it's ingrained so hard. And so I like Pelletier's trajectory to the NHL. I think he's a surefire NHL player, but I agree he may not develop into a top 6 offensive star, but his floor is high enough that I felt, this is a player that, even if he doesn't turn out to be an all-star, he's still going to be an NHL player and he's still going to play several hundred games in the NHL, I think. So, compared to the guy that I had ranked next on my list, he definitely has top 6 offensive upside and could be a star, but he's only done it at the USHL level, so not as certain. So let's talk about the next guy. You had him ranked second on your list. I had him just below third, so we almost agree here. That's pretty impressive. I'm talking about their 21 first-round pick, 13th overall, Matt Coronado, who part of the loaded up Chicago Steel in the USHL, lit the lamp for 48 goals in 51 games. That's pretty much a goal a game pace. That is sick. That's just crazy. So he is he's 18 years old and now he's going to the NCAA. He'll be playing for Harvard. He's not going to be able to score at that level, but is he a one-trick pony? That's a pretty good trick. I'm okay if it is, but what's your scouting report on Coronado and why'd you have him at 2?
It's funny. His goals got all the attention, right? But I think from an NHL projection, we actually like his playmaking a little bit more. So the reason behind this is that he's Again, just like Pelletier, he's a straight line guy, straight line attacker, not a ton of diversity in his game, but his passing skill is absolutely incredible. Some of the plays that he makes are just highlight reel, even if they're buried behind a barrage of outside lane shots. These aerial passes, these crazy backhand feeds to the trailer through three defenders, that kind of stuff really, really appealed to us from his NHL game. And of course, he is also, just like Pelletier and just like Zary, his skating does come with flaws. He's not going to be a speedster in the NHL by any stretch of the imagination, no matter how hard he works. But we think with a guy like Coronado, who has evolved his game already in the USHL, the player that he was as a draft -1 was very different than the player as he was as a draft year player. We're betting that he's going to do it again. And so instead of just being this guy who's going to fill the net as a shooter, he's going to play a more give and go game. He's going to become more of a playmaker. And ultimately in the NHL, we like his chances of becoming a very good third line winger, bare minimum. And if you continue to see skating growth from him, there's a real chance that he's going to be a second liner. And on top of that, a unique one, because he brings so much in the way of trying to get pucks to the middle through retrievals. It brings so much in the way of off puck scoring instincts. So a lot of different ways that he can complement high skill players and drive lower skill players on a lower part of the lineup.
He's definitely an interesting player for sure. And, he's one that he was ranked, drafted 13th overall. And I think his fantasy value is higher than his NHL value. So he's a player I moved up on my fantasy rankings on draft day. So he's really interesting. It'd be nice to see what he does at the NCAA level at Harvard. If he has a really good, strong season as a freshman, I think his tenure there might be limited to one and done or maybe 2 seasons. And then Calgary might want to get him at the pro level, see what he can do there. It'll be a fun player to watch. Keep tabs on that file. Holy smokes, we agreed on another player here at number 4, Dustin Wolf, the goaltender. We both had him as the Flames' top-ranked goalie. So he's, what I said in my article is he might end up being the Flames' all-time best value draft pick in franchise history. Not their best player or their best draft pick, but their best value draft pick, because they got him in 2019 in the 7th round, 214th overall, which is like 3rd or 4th last overall in the draft. So the percentages of that player playing in the NHL for you are like 0.2 or something like that. Very, very low. But his WHL career was just spectacular. He had a record of 106, 34, and 6 with a 184 goals against average and 24 shutouts. He just dominated junior in the WHL with Everett, I believe it was. And, he made the American World Junior team. Wasn't able to get the start behind Spencer Knight, but he was the backup and he looked great there. Didn't get scored on at the World Juniors at all. And then last year, like Zary, he started the season waiting for the WHL to start and the AHL. Didn't play very much and didn't look very good at the American League level to start. I think he gave up like 5 goals in his first game. I'm not terribly concerned about that. He is pretty young. He's 20 years old. He'll be turning pro. This will be his first full season of pro coming up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he starts it in the ECHL. And again, that wouldn't really be a concern for me. I think Adam Werner and Tyler Parsons should be the tandem in the American Hockey League. You had him ranked 4th as well. It's hard not to like this guy. What's the EP take on him?
We actually had him ranked as the 2nd goaltender in Calgary system, but that's not a slight against him. That's how confident our goaltending expert Catherine Silverman is in the other goaltenders game. And in Wolf's case, I mean, the numbers are obviously crazy. Everett Silvertip's goalies always post crazy numbers. He's no different, but there is a different flavor with his game than you're getting with the other non-Carter Hart Everett Silvertips goaltenders. He's a smaller guy by NHL standards, but he just always knows the play that's coming. Always. His tracking is fantastic. His management of his depth, his reads, very, very strong. And of course, you're getting a pretty advanced skater to boot. So he can adjust to the play extremely quickly. He's very efficient. There's a lot of technical elements of his game that look like they're going to be very, very strong NHL components for sure. We we see him as a potential NHL starter.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't realize you had Vladar rated ahead of him. I didn't have Vladar in my top 10, so we'll have to get to him once we get out of my top 10 and start talking about the players that I totally missed on. I don't like Vladar, but we'll get to that. All right, so we both agree that Dustin Wolf's great. Do you think he's got NHL starting upside?
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, that's fantasy relevant there then. All right, so I didn't have Vladar in my top 10. The next guy I did have, you didn't have inside of yours. I'm curious if Adam Ruczicka was in consideration, if he was close to it. I had him there because, and I thought this was kind of interesting. I'll pick your brain on this. He's one of the few prospects that actually showed significant signs of improvement and development in Stockton last year. They kind of struggled. They had a not very great year. They didn't put a lot of numbers on the boards. But his counting stats improved. He had 21 points in 28 games. He got an NHL recall. He had decent minutes there, but I think he had one game where he played with Matt Tkachuk. He's got great size. He's 6'4", 203. So there's a lot to like there. I think his NHL certainty is not rock solid, but he's definitely should get a chance this year to get some more games in. And his upside isn't top 6, I don't think, but I think his floor is pretty impressive. So what's your take on Ruczicka?
We had him 15th in their system. We just didn't see any outcome where he's sort of a top 6 guy in the NHL. He's a skilled puck handler. That's kind of the thing that he does best, beating guys one-on-one. But to do that in the NHL, you have to be able to skate. He's a very weak skater, heavy feet, doesn't get a ton of ankle flexion, hips stay really high, can't generate a lot of power. He forces a lot of shots. He doesn't distribute particularly effectively. And the defensive game is very inconsistent. So in his regard, just because, he's big, he has hands, and if he could play defense, NHL team would certainly take him in their lineup, whether or not he's effective. But his defense, very inconsistent. If he continues to improve it, then maybe he's a checker, but we didn't really see any more reason to be excited about his game than that, regardless of the stats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Craig Button once told me you don't scout with a tape measure, and I think that applies here to Ruczicka. He said it in context of cautioning against not drafting guys because they're 5'7" or whatever. If you can play, you can play. And just because you're 6'4", 203 pounds doesn't mean you can keep up with the pace at the NHL level. And that is a pretty significant concern. Is it just his physical ability in terms of skating to keep up with the play? Or do you think he doesn't process the game at an NHL level as well?
Well, like I said, the difficulty is that he's not a great distributor. And so if you're a below average skater in the NHL, you have to be an above average distributor. Generally, you got to be able to move the puck effectively. You got to see options right away, move it 1 touch, 2 touch, whatever. That's not his game at all, unfortunately. Although he has made some real improvements, there's not denying that. But we just didn't see quite enough there in regards to how is he going to offset his skating issues in the NHL. And to his credit, watching him in the NHL, you did see a lot more defensive engagement. He tried a lot more to, get defenders on his back, be more physical. But I think if he does make the NHL, it's more, again, as a 4th liner and a guy who is going to play whether or not he's good. Simply, he's going to play because he's big and can hit people.
Mm. All right, that's interesting. So the next player I want to talk about, I got at number 6. You had him at 5, so we're not too far off here. And that is their 2020 3rd-round pick, Jeremie Poirier. He's an offensive defenseman, but he's just a bit of a nightmare in his own end. His plus minus numbers have been pretty awful, but they are trending hard in the correct direction. It looks like they've got, offensively speaking, they got a 1st-round talent in the 3rd round. But I guess you guys are seeing signs of improvement in his defensive liabilities. We're going to keep him out of the NHL, but they are improving. You have him ranked 5th Do you see him being an NHL player or kind of not being able to play defense well enough?
Well, I think as much as I like to be the answers guy, I think it's a little bit early to answer that, just because again, the skill is incredible. It's very rare to find a defenseman who can both shoot and handle the puck like he can. And on top of that, there's a ton of playmaking skill. He just doesn't use it enough because St. John is content on having him and Villeneuve take 45 shots per game for some reason. So I think the thing again, the defense, he's not a turnover prone player, that's for sure. It's just that the defensive side last season was very, or I guess in 2019, 2020, he was very committing. His skating kind of bled into that, where he would kind of do these 1 foot stops where he stops on 1 foot, lunges in, trying to get the guy early. You can't do that in the NHL. You get turnstile. They beat you up the middle every single time. He stopped doing that. He improved his backwards skating, started using crossover, C cuts, kind of generate backwards momentum, angle up the play. Still not very good. And the off puck defense, he's a little bit more engaged. He's very reactionary. He's very late. Sometimes the motor just doesn't work at all. So it's a tough one because you need to play in the NHL, even in today's NHL, you need to be responsible defensively to a point. Like there's a threshold, right? Where it doesn't matter how good offensively you are. If you want to get minutes to use that offense, you have to reach some threshold. And he's not quite there, but he is closer than he was in his draft year. I think next year will probably be pretty indicative of where he's at. He's going to be playing on a Memorial Cup team. They're going to be loaded in terms of talent, and he's also going to be the go-to guy. So what will happen then defensively? Is he going to be more engaged? Is he going to improve knowing that he could win the biggest trophy in junior hockey? Guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and then once his junior career is over, the Flames coaches will get their hands on him, and they'll be able to really mold him in the way they want, or get an idea of if is he unwilling to play defense or is he incapable of playing defense? And what do you think? I guess there's a bunch of different reasons why you might be ineffective defensively as a defenseman, because you can't anticipate. You don't have the hockey IQ for it. But based on his skill, he's definitely got some hockey sense that would have seemed to me that he should be able to anticipate what the play is going to turn into and put himself in the correct position for that. You already said he's got great skating ability, so he should be able to physically get himself into those positions. Is it just a lack of defensive interest that he's a forward playing defense?
Well, the first thing is that we think the skating is actually a weakness. The defensive skating has improved, but it's still below average. The forward stride, again, is a weakness. And of course, as a defenseman, your backwards and lateral mobility is more important. Your ability to kind of separate in tight, do a punch turn. He doesn't have much depth, so he can't really separate in that way. But the big thing is that he might just have the Ryan Merkley issue, right? And the Ryan Merkley issue is that for so many years, he didn't have to play defense because he was so superior to everyone else. And, he had people in his ear all the time telling him that it wasn't his responsibility. And then once he goes to the London Knights and you start seeing Merkley try to improve, he's putting the effort, but he's still making bad reads because there are times it's just ingrained in him that he needs to take time off here. Like when the puck's in the corner, catch your breath, get ready to go on offense. And then when you do that as a defenseman at higher levels, you get burned. And Poirier doesn't quite do it to the same extent. Like it doesn't seem quite as habitual, but it certainly isn't good. Like he doesn't seem to have the motor consistent. He doesn't seem to have the engagement consistently. And of course, just like anything else, when you're doing it all the time, when you're doing a lot of it and you're trying to improve it, you get better at it. And in Poirier's case, I think he has gotten better at it. But again, when you're not engaged, the motor is running low or whatever, you're not getting as much out of the reps as you could be. And I think that's kind of the core issue here.
All right. So that's my top 6: Zary, Pelletier, Coronado, Wolf, Ruczicka, and Poirier. And I got another defenseman at number 7, who I was just one step behind you guys. So not too much of a disparity there. That's Conor Mackey, who went undrafted while playing in the NCAA. Was previously invited to Calgary's development camp, so he didn't go under the Flames' radar, but they never drafted him. Then they signed him as a free agent last season. He played most of last year in the American Hockey League, and 16 points, 33 penalty minutes. Was recalled to the Flames and made his NHL debut later on. I think it was late in the season. And I don't think he played very many games, but he looked pretty good. And I think he's got the ability to play at the NHL level. I don't think it's going to happen this year, barring some injuries or other type disaster, just based on the players that they've signed. So, I'm kind of a big fan of this kid. I like what I've seen from him. It's been kind of limited sample size, but what's your guys' take on Conor Mackey?
Well, everything that we just said about Poirier, he's the opposite. They're like perfect puzzle pieces that could fit together. His mobility is a massive strength. He's explosive, even if his stride lacks a little bit of refinement. He can really separate from players. And defensively, he's just so confident, so comfortable, so reliable. He's just very aware. He has some problem-solving skills. Like, it's not just he's going to one area, tying up a guy. He's making the next step. He's taking control of the attacker's feet. He's bringing them to the boards. He's taking the puck away, and then he's skilled enough in transition, even if his puck handling is a bit of an issue, that he can instantly spin the puck around back up the middle of the ice, and then start a rush, join it himself. So we're not projecting some big offensive totals from him, but he could be a very, very capable number 4, number 5, playing a reliable defensive game with some transition value.
Yeah, and I think he's got some bangers value as well, where he likes to hit, and he's a defenseman, so he'll get you some block shots, and he plays a physically aggressive game, so he'll get you some penalty minutes as well. So if you're in a multi-cat league, his value increases significantly there. Yeah, no, I'm a fan of his. I like him. I think he should be one of the first players recalled too, should they have an injury. I mean, he is waiver exempt, so they can call him up and send him down, and call him up and send him down, and all the live long day, and not have to worry about him getting snagged off waivers that way too, right? Okay, so moving on to number 8, I had Ryan Francis here. You guys didn't have him inside your top 10. He's a 5th round pick in the 2020 drafts. And speaking of not measuring players with a tape, this is a great example. He's 5'9", 170, so he's on the slight side. And he dropped on the draft. He went in the 5th round, 143rd overall, after having 72 points in 61 games in his draft year. And then in 32 games last year, he scored 50. He's got silky smooth hands. He's got a good shot. He's got quick feet. I've not really watched a lot of his games, but I've seen a lot of his highlight reels, and they're pretty sexy. So it's obviously really dangerous to scout players from their highlight reels and not watch their game. But that being said, I have him in my top 10 at 8. You guys don't have him in your top 10. What's your take on this guy?
We had him ranked 11, and really there's an argument that he could slide into the 10th spot. And everything you said, the hands, the pace of operation, really smooth player, some highlight reel capabilities for sure. His shot looked a lot better this season. Mechanically, he gets more separation in between his feet, so he can put more downforce, get more power off. Looked a lot more controlled as well. Again, lower body helps with stability. And I think in the NHL, his role is more as just being a transition guy. You give him the puck, he's going to break it out of the zone, turn it into an entry, then offload it, and let his teammates do the work from there. So I don't think the point production is going to be a major selling point for his game at the next level. But he does have some really interesting playmaking flashes. He's not like a true manipulative guy who can create a lane, but if it's open, he's going to connect, and he's going to connect fast, and he's going to connect off the backhand, off the forehand with a saucer pass by pulling the puck into his feet and passing under their sticks. So yeah, he's an interesting player for sure. There's a lot of reason to be excited for him. And on top of that, there are a lot of guys in this Flame system who have the archetype of good puck handler and not much else. And I feel like out of everyone, including William Stromgren, who we've had ranked over him, his game has a little bit more substance to it beyond the hands.
Yeah, and he should be turning pro this year too, right? So That'll be interesting to see how he translates his offense at the pro level. Hopefully he hits the ground running. Stockton could use the boost. Okay, number 9, I went with, and this is the one that I was perhaps the most uncertain on, Johan Kinnvall, another free agent signing. They didn't draft him. He's coming over from Sweden. He's a 6-foot defenseman. He's got a couple seasons of SHL development under his belt already. He's 24 years old. So like Mackey, he's a little on the older side. He doesn't have a lot of time to break into the lineup. He's going to have one season in the AHL. Then if he's not NHL ready after that, the NHL certainty drops right down for me. I haven't really seen much of him play. I'm just basically looking at his profile, and he's 24 years old. He's got lots of pro development. He's going to given the opportunity for a top pairing and probably run the power play in Stockton as well. So he's got all the ingredients to have a successful season, transition nicely to North America, and then be a legitimate candidate for an NHL position next year. And is, having watched him a little bit more than me, is there something that I'm missing here, or is that kind of what the plan is with this player?
Yeah, we see him as kind of your stereotypical European free agent signing. He's smooth, composed. He can make a breakout pass. You're going to see some decent stuff from offensively. He can draw on guys and then pass the other way. Not a super high-end skilled player. Personally, I just didn't see enough from him that would warrant NHL ability other than being a call-up guy. So that's why he didn't quite make the ranking. But again, sometimes some of these players hit, other times they don't. Like Mikko Lehtinen, we were super high on him. He didn't hit. And then Ilya Mikheyev, I know he was a forward, but I didn't see anything that was NHL worthy in his game. And he turned out perfectly fine in the NHL. So it's a very mixed bag with these free agent signings. And just because I don't have him ranked, it doesn't mean that it was the right decision.
Yeah, we're knee deep in that muddy territory of any of these guys. You could talk me into knocking them out of the top 10 or way down lower and taking another guy and moving him way up. It's a lot of gray area with these guys. So rounding out my top 10, I went with Mathias Emil Pettersen. Has the moniker of the Norwegian Wayne Gretzky, which I love. Good luck living up to that name. So he's 21 years old now. He's 5'11", and it sounds like he's another import player, but he has been in North America for some time now. He's played high school hockey, the USHL, NCAA, and then he played the last season in the American Hockey League. His final season of NCAA was great, point a game player with Denver. And then his rookie season as a pro last year, 14 points in 29 games. Not bad, but not great. And like I mentioned, Stockton kind of struggled offensively as well. I would say his season in the American Hockey League as a rookie was pretty good, actually. But he's 21 years old too, so he's got that going for him. I'm not sure if I would say his progression is moving up like a lightning bolt. I wouldn't say it's moving down. I think it's kind of in the middle, which is not discouraging, but it's not encouraging. Where do you guys see MEP?
Well, just like with Jan Kuznetsov, they took him out too early of college hockey. We like him a lot. The puck handling is exceptional. He's actually one of the best puck handlers on the planet, certainly in the prospect sphere. Mechanically, he's perfect, top hand, free, off his hip, rolls the puck out the back rather than that really strong, up and down motion. He just doesn't do much else beyond the puck handling. The playmaking is very inconsistent, mostly comes on the power play. He can make the early pass in 5-on-5 play in transition, but very frustrating to watch. I think another year in the NCAA would have seen him take his game to another level. He's a guy who needs physical development, but more importantly, he needs to understand how to protect the puck, how to use body positioning to leverage the opposition, and how to make his puck handling work effectively in the NHL. And another year with Denver would have helped that. And instead, he was put in a pro environment that, yes, well, he scored because of the situation he was in. He was very clearly outmatched in certain categories. And I think long-term, that's going to prove to be the wrong decision because, again, when you're dealing with someone who has that natural puck handling skill and can see the game in ways, especially in open ice, you need to give them all the time that they can have to continue to build off that. And I felt like he didn't build off that this season. After two very successful seasons in Denver, a third one would have been ideal.
That's interesting. I find Calgary to be a relatively patient team with their prospect development and not necessarily quick to rush players into leagues that they're not ready for. And you're saying the exact opposite in this case. Is that more of a one-off, or am I just off the mark with my assessment of their player development? Do you like the way the Flames develop their players?
Well, I think for the most part, yes, they were very patient. Like you asked me this question last year, it would have been a resounding yes, because they didn't like Pettersen looks amazing. Like so many developments in a lot of regards. Like Zavgrani took a massive step that in 2019, 2020 as well. And so it would have been positive. And I think overall it's still mostly positive. But I look at Pettersen and I look at Jan Kuznetsov, again, a guy who was just figuring out how to play with the puck in the college level. And then they signed him. Like, why was that necessary? And then what is the option here? You send him to St. John, and where it's clearly a step down in competition. Like, of course, that's a great situation to be in, but it seems mostly by happenstance that they ended up getting that. So I don't know. It's a really tricky one to answer, but in previous years, I would have had very positive things to say. I mean, you also can't ignore the fact that like Conor Zary looked like a completely different player this season in a positive way. And that's really the only player other than the goaltenders who really looks like a big ticket prospect in this organization. So, that's ultimately what it gets defined by. And if Zary turns out to be a dual threat scorer in the NHL, the rest of it doesn't really matter all that much if you're an NHL team, just given the odds.
Yeah. So one thought I just had on that was both those players you're talking about that you think the Flames pulled out earlier, NCAA players. I wonder if player agents put the gears to the team and say, you need to sign my guy. If he doesn't want to go back for a third year. If he does, he's playing 4 years and becoming a free agent.
Think they got scared because of Adam Fox.
Well, maybe, I don't think this is the same kind of caliber players that we're talking about with Pettersen and Fox, but losing players for nothing always kind of sucks after you've held on to them for so long. All right, so that rounds out my top 10. Now I'm really anxious to get through and talk about some of the other guys. You had Dan Vladar at 3, and I had him outside my top 10. Off the top of my head, maybe I had him. I don't remember why he didn't make my top 10, but he might have failed to qualify for my criteria, which was 25 years old or 25 NHL games played. He might have exceeded. I don't think so off the top of my head, but anyways, that might be the case. But you guys have him right up there. He's going to be in the NHL this year, backing up Markstrom. So made expendable, arguably in Boston. They decided to go in different directions with Allmark and Swayman, and let him go. That was a little bit of a red flag for me too. Giving up on a prospect is always a concern. But tell me why you guys are so emphatically confident with Vladar.
So the big thing here, even though he's 24 or whatever, is the skating ability. He's not Igor Shesterkin or whatever, but he's the next best thing in terms of goaltender skating ability. Just very mobile, very quick on his edges, very fast, can adjust to plays. And so that was the big appealing thing. If you're looking for, star potential like we are, or top of the lineup potential, even though his chance of becoming that might seem slim, we just felt it was higher than everyone else because he has that one standout attribute. And so when Catherine Silverman was putting together our top 15 goalie prospects, he checked in at number 10 to Dustin Wolf's number 13. And the big reason for that was the skating ability, the potential. And even though he's 24, a lot of the issues that he has with his game are more technique based than athleticism or skating. So that was the primary reason here. He's going to be a backup in the NHL. He's probably going to be decent. But this skating really gives us some pause to think that one day he could turn into a starter.
Yeah, no, I did have him in my honorable mention. So he wasn't disqualified from my criteria. He's under 25. He's got about 5 NHL games played. So yeah, maybe I should have had him inside my top 10 at the very least. Another guy who didn't make my 10 that made yours was Heineman. And I believe he was part of the return with the Sam Bennett trade. coming over from Florida. So not a Flames draft pick, but they coveted him in trade and acquired him with Sam Bennett. Two-way forward playing over in the SHL. Seems like a bit of a long-term project. What's your guys' take on him?
Well, we had him at 7, and we felt that was like at the lower end of the range, to be completely honest. I think there's a real argument that he could be their number 3 ranked prospect. He's for the fantasy nerds, he's a perfect. He's an awesome fit. He hits people all the time, and he's going to score goals in the NHL. There's a lot of upside here because of the way that he plays, because of the hard skills and the soft skill combination that he has. He's very clever, actually, in the way that he plays physically. So he's not just trying to truck people, but he cuts off their hands really well, gets them on his back, then moves the puck to the inside. A lot of times with these players, they cycle the puck and then they just keep cycling it over and over and over again. Heineman's not that. He wants to bring the puck to the middle as soon as he gets an opportunity, and then from there he's going to shoot. And without the puck, he's hanging out in scoring areas, adjusting, getting ready to fire off a big one-timer. There is a lot to like about his game. There's some issues skating wise. I think it's going to be an NHL strength because he's a very powerful kid. It's just a matter of getting into the right posture consistently. Yeah, we're big fans of him. We think that he's basically a supercharged Pelletier.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement. I have to see if he's available in my hockey league. Next up would be Cole Jordan, 21 draft pick. I didn't have him on my honorable mentions even. So is this guy a bit of a sleeper prospect?
Yeah, we had him 36th on our 2021 NHL draft board. So we were real high on him. That they managed to get him with the 141st pick was very, very, very good work. He was arguably mechanically, he has the best stride in the draft class. I think I hedged a little bit on that in my article, but now I'm in a podcast form. I can say it. He has the best stride in the draft class in the 2021 draft class. It's perfect. It's perfect. Knees pushed over toes, hips tilted back perfectly. His chest stays up, complete perfect extensions, under the shoulder recoveries. His crossovers are really impressive too, knee over knee. And he gets that power skating inside leg push off, which you don't see a lot from NHL prospects. That's something that usually comes later in their game. And then unsurprisingly, that obviously makes him a very strong transition player. He's very deceptive. He's a skilled puck handler. He tries to use the middle often. He does throw a lot of pucks away. He does lack some discipline as a decision maker with the puck on his stick. And there are some warts offensively. But I think as a guy who's going to kill the rush early, he's going to be physical, and he's going to break the puck out while being a terrific skater. There are very, very, very few prospects who could bring that combination of upside with that level of skating. The big thing is that he was a number 4 in the WHL as of September 2002. So why didn't he play more? Well, the first thing is, you have Damon Hunt. Damon Hunt's obviously going to play all the big minutes, but Damon Hunt was also paired with a lesser player than Jordan. But also Jordan is mistake prone. It was his first full season in the WHL. I think he got in 20-some games, and he was injured for most of the year as a draft -1. And there's some things to clean up defensively reads wise, but in terms of just tools, he's a first-round player. It's very rare to have this combination.
And he's a late birthday, so he should have, I think, just one more season of junior eligibility left. And he's in the WHL. Sorry, what team is he with?
He's with Moose Jaw. And so Moose Jaw is going to be good. They got Denton Matejchuk, Damon Hunt. So they got 2 very, very good options. He, again, is going to be a secondary defenseman on his team. So I wonder if a path here to maximizing his probability of reaching the NHL is to kind of stick him in back as an overager and see what happens and see if you can get some more offense out of him. Although, to be fair, if you get him in the pro game, then you can get him to improve his defensive game, get him to pace a little bit faster. But yeah, we were huge fans of him. Surprised that he went as late as he did, given that he checks off all the boxes for NHL teams, big, fast.
Right on. Okay, so then the last guy you had ranked, that I didn't have ranked, he's your 10th out of the top 10, and that is William Stromgren, another 21 draftee, second round pick, 45th overall. Why do you guys have him in your top 10 and I don't?
He's infuriating to watch. One of the most frustrating players you can watch in this prospect pool is just like suffer through William Stromgren tape. He just tries to dangle people all the time. It's very, very infuriating, but he really gets how to do it, right? I don't think it's quite Emilio Pettersen level, but he understands how to bait defenders to reach in, kind of knock them off balance, and then go through them. There are some playmaking intricacies to his game. He just doesn't use it very often because he's so singularly focused on treating opponents like pylons. A very interesting player. I think he's kind of the strongest player archetype in this Calgary Flames prospect pool. Big, loves to handle the puck, loves to deke people. It's a perfect combination of the two players that they seem to value, which is, physicality and puck handling skills. And he melds that better than anyone else in the organization. But if he hits, the upside is, a middle six guy who can score some points. If he doesn't, if he doesn't hit, there's probably not an NHL outcome for him as a grinder or in a checking role. He's probably just a guy who has some fun in the AHL.
All right, so that's both our top 10s. Let's talk about some of the other players. There's some guys in here that have higher fantasy Fantrax ownership, so some people out there are stashing these guys on their prospect roster, hoping for the best. Glen, Gawdin, and Matt Phillips have both proven to be efficient producers at the American Hockey League level, and neither one has managed to crack the NHL level. Are these guys just classic tweeners?
I think Gawdin is. I think Phillips might be able to play kind of a checking role, be an energy guy, bring a little bit of defensive value, while also, find the odd goal here or there in front of the net. Gawdin's just a little bit too basic, I think, to become an NHL player. He's the type of guy who you watch him and it's like, yeah, this guy obviously scored a lot in junior hockey. He plays an inside. He wants to make plays through pressure. You watch him in the AHL and it's the same thing, but he just does it at too low of a pace. Doesn't bring enough impact on the other side of the rink to kind of offset it.
Well, that's disappointing because of the two of them, the one that I own in fantasy is Glen Gawdin. So whoops. Okay. Two more players, and these guys are maybe more valuable in the multi-cat and banger categories. Martin Pospisil and Eetu Tulola. Eetu Tulola is not as widely owned as Pospisil. Both have low ownership, but if these guys ever made it, they would check a whole lot of categories with hits and penalty minutes and shots they both like to shoot. I think Tulola's got a better goal scoring upside, and Pospisil has a much higher penalty minute upside. If he can stay healthy. Do you see either of these guys as being NHL players, or they're kind of maxed out at the American Hockey League level is kind of what it's looking like?
Yeah, Tulola can't move or think at an NHL level. So that's kind of, whereas Pospisil just can't move. Pospisil is very physical. He's also a really creative playmaker. Like, you think that he's just running around mindlessly, but then he decks some dude and then instantly knows the next play, throws a pass to a teammate staying around in the slot. He lacks discipline, but he really seems to have good offensive feel. He has really good timing for what's coming next and how to make the next play and how to weaponize his physicality. Unfortunately, his hands do kind of let him down. I think that's largely connected to his skating, actually, because I think he's very inconsistent with his skating posture. His hips rise and fall over and over. And so that changes the way that you contact the puck on the ice. And so I think as he gets stronger and his skating improves, he's going to become a better puck handler. Like, I really do think there's an NHL chance for Pospisil. It's just very, very, very far away. But there is some upside. Again, the playmaking, the physicality, really interesting, rare combination.
Mm-hmm. And he's got a bit of a Band-Aid label attached to him too, where because he plays such an agitating game, people really like to pound him, and he's not the biggest guy. He's only 172 pounds, so his ability to endure the abuse that that he attracts hasn't necessarily proven to be the case. So let's talk a little about two more goalies, Adam Werner and Tyler Parsons. Tyler Parsons had a pretty good profile coming into the NHL. A lot of fantasy appeal with him coming out of London, playing for, I think he played for Canada at the World Juniors. And he's just really failed to develop at the pro level. And Adam Werner is going to be getting the opportunity. They'll both be playing for Stockton. Who do you see as the better bet there? They'll be getting competing with each other for starts there.
I haven't watched Warner, so I'm just going to say Parsons out of my lack of knowledge. But
fair enough.
Parsons is like, he's frustrating to watch because he's insanely gifted in some of the things that he can do. He's very explosive at times, very flexible. He has these crazy reactionary saves. And then you dig a little deeper and he's always out of position. His transitions are very slow when he's not making the highlight reel play. So I don't think either of them are NHL players. They're going to be very quickly surpassed by Dustin Wolf in that Stockton net for sure.
Right on. You mentioned Yan Kuznetsov a couple of times. He's a very defensive defenseman, so not necessarily fantasy relevant. So I think we can maybe just gloss over him. Gawdin is been a disappointment since turning pro. He looked so great in his last year where he played with Lafreniere. I saw him play for Russia at the Showcase series as well, and I was like, man, he doesn't need Lafreniere. This guy's got the skills. He can play. And then he's kind of proven me wrong. He's turned pro and was pretty disappointing. What's holding him back? What elements of his game is he missing?
So I ended up still liking actually his game when I saw him in Stockton. The biggest difficulty is that when you looked at him in the Q, a lot of what he did was being faster than people. And in the A, he is very much not faster than everyone. So there's been some difficulty with him trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. He does have some passing skill. Like he can make it out. He can make plays off the backhand. He can open up the odd lane here or there. So I think that's probably his path to improvement. It just seems a little bit unlikely at this stage, especially given the amount of talent that they have around them. Like Pettersen isn't going anywhere. Francis is presumably about to take whatever spot Gawdin is about to have in the AHL. So a bit of a tricky situation for him. I wonder how different his game looks if he's in a different system.
Right. Last guy for me that I kind of wanted to get your opinion on is Rory Kerins. However you pronounce his last name. He's an OHL player who didn't play last year. He was a refugee looking for a league. I think he got 4 games in at the American Hockey League level, but you can only play so many players. And I guess when the music ended, he didn't have a chair. But the season prior, he had 30 goals with Sault Ste. Marie, and he should be going back to the Sioux for one more season, I believe. Yep. I think he's 19. Yep. So he's a player who I'm expecting to have a really big season in the OHL. And, all of a sudden might seem like he's kind of coming out of nowhere if he has a breakout season in the CHL this year. Am I way off base there? Or is this a player that people who are listening to the show can be like writing that name down, putting him on their watch lists, checking in every once in a while to see how he's doing in Sault Ste. Marie, and then maybe snagging him on the waiver wire and adding him to their prospect bench and percolating on him for a couple more seasons?
Depends on how big your bench is.
The leagues I'm in, it's deep.
All right. So I think there is a chance, especially depending on what he's able to do this season. So there are a couple things. Kyle Raftis and co built a very interesting Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds team. Like, they're going to be good this year. Very fun, very explosive offense. And Kerins is going to be a big part of that. He's a great shooter. Like, he's an NHL caliber shooter in junior, or at least projects as one. Good off puck instincts, good timing. He can make plays out of his shooting motion as well. So like, there is some deceptiveness to his game. I think there's a real chance that he kind of finishes top 20 in OHL scoring. Just a very tricky one because he didn't play, and we still don't know how that's going to negatively impact players. It's a very, very difficult situation for sure. So I'd keep an eye on him just because, there's always 2 or 3 guys in the O who pop. And Kerins seems to be a very obvious choice for that, just given his draft season and given the situation that he's going to be in with this very fun, very fast, very high-paced Sioux Greyhounds roster.
All right. So that exhausts the list of players for the Calgary Flames I want to talk about. I think we've covered over 20 prospects. Have I missed anyone? Do you guys have someone on your radar who you're like, don't forget about this guy?
Yeah. So there was one guy who was very interesting to me, and that's Ilya Solovyev. So he went back to the K this year. He's from Belarus. He had a very interesting season in the OHL. A couple years ago, there's some mobility concerns, just like seemingly every other prospect not named Cole Jordan in this organization. But he activates into play. He checks off a lot of modern principles. Like, he's more of a playmaker than a point shooter. He can get up the ice. He can make the odd thing. He can kill plays early. Very, 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 very long-term, very uncertain, but just some interesting things. And then Jan Kuznetsov, I think if he continues to improve his puck skills, he deserves to be on the radar here. We had him number 14 defensive guy, but he was much better on retrievals. So with back pressure, he was able to find some separation, get the puck up the ice. He looked inside. Lots of really interesting, exciting bits to his game. I don't know if he's an NHL player, but I think he's tracking to become an interesting prospect. Like, if he has another step forward this season, I think he's probably like a top 8 or top 10 guy in the organization.
He'll be in Stockton, right?
Yeah. So there is some. He was drafted by St. John, and obviously they had Francis and Poirier there last year. They're gonna have Poirier again this year. So maybe they'll send him there. I think that's the best possible outcome. But physically, he's ready to play. He's mobile enough to play in the AHL. You know, he's going to run over people. And so maybe that's just too exciting to pass up.
Awesome stuff, Mitch. You really brought the A game today. So a couple takeaways for me: Emil Heineman, Cole Jordan. Those are two names that you've really tuned me into, guys who I think I might need to start paying closer attention to. This has been a lot of fun, man. So tell us where anyone who's listening who may not follow you, which is doubtful, but where can we find you on Twitter?
You can go to Mitch L, just L Brown on twitter.com, and then check out our work on EP Rinkside. We're breaking down all top prospect pools, 32 to number 1. There are going to be some surprises, of course, and of course the top 15 prospects within it. We just recently had our top 100 prospects, and I think virtually every team had someone in there. So there's a little bit of fun for everyone. I'd really appreciate it if you checked it out. We work hard. We're trying to put out the best possible content, and we have a great team. So very, very excited and happy with what we're doing. It would be awesome if you joined us.
Yeah, I can't recommend the subscription enough. Their material is fantastic. It's like a 2-for-1 sort of subscription, really. You get all of the unlocked features on the Elite Prospects player pages, and then you get the EP Rinkside articles. That's comparable to the Athletic. The stuff that they have there and the professional writers that you guys have on your team are it's an impressive roster, I have to say. So go ahead and take my word for it and sign up for EP Rinkside subscription and thank me later when you win your hockey pool. All right, Mitch, this has been great. Maybe I'll have to get you back on for another team later on down the road, further down the alphabet, if you're available. This has been my pleasure, and I've learned a lot. So thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Pete. I really appreciate it. It was a great time.
Yeah, thanks, man. All right, so next up will be the Carolina Hurricanes. That'll be the next episode coming up. They're top prospects. So we'll talk to you then.